Hello and welcome everyone. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the fearful avoidant and their betrayal core wound that makes them feel like they're unable to trust. We're going to be talking about where this kind of stems from, how it manifests in your relationship, and 3 things you can do to start healing this wound today. But first, if you're new to my channel, my name's Marcella. I'm an attachment practitioner trained by Tice Gibson in the Personal Development School. I have a bachelor's degree in business, and I've been studying the field of personal development and attachment theory for the past 5 years now. Now let's dive in. If you have a fearful avoidant attachment style, you more than likely have the number 1 core wound that's always popping up for fearful avoidance, and this is the betrayal core wound. If you're not familiar with what core wounds are these deep inner beliefs that we have about ourselves, and we project them out into our life. We obtain core wounds such as I'm going to be betrayed, I'm not good enough, for example, I don't matter, I'm not cared about, I'm disliked. We pick these up through repetition plus emotion. So whatever we are experiencing throughout our life, we tend to personalize it and give it meaning about us. So an example of betrayal core wound for the fearful avoidant, this can be picked up throughout early childhood, right? Where it's like if there's any forms of inconsistency where, sometimes your caregivers are showing up for you and sometimes they aren't showing up for you. And this feels like a form of betrayal. So instead of saying there's something going on with my caregiver, we tend to personalize everything and we make it mean something about us. So this is where you can say, I am being betrayed, right? And then this can also stem from when there's incongruency. So it's like what someone says and what they do does not align, right? This can be like your caregiver says they're going to take you to the park one day and then they don't, or they promise you some grand Christmas gift and then you don't get it. This incongruency makes you feel like you can't trust that person because it's like what they say and what they do does not align. Now, of course, this type of wound can come from real betrayals actually happening where you've grown up and maybe you get into a relationship and you actually were betrayed by somebody because somebody had some kind of infidelity or something like that. That can definitely be the case as well. But a majority of it does come from our early childhood, and it comes from these perceived betrayals that took place over a long period of time. So if you are a fearful avoidant, you might also notice that this shows up in your life all of the time. This can show up in your relationship as a feeling of like the ball is going to drop or feeling like doom is on the way, but you don't know where or when to expect it. You're just expecting this to happen, and you can feel like anxiety and fear in relationships. You might notice that you're very suspicious about your partner and what they are doing if there's not a lot of communication. You might be fearing that they're doing something sneaky or something is definitely going on, and this is kind of how it shows up. And an example that I like to use for the betrayal core wound, I just wanted to jump in here and let you know that I have a fearful avoidant blueprint located on my website that you can buy for only $10. This will give you insight to yourself. If you are a fearful avoidant, your traits, characteristics, your fears, the way you operate when it comes to boundaries, with communication, with conflict. And if you're interested in getting that, it will be located in the description box below. Imagine there is a bear in the woods, right? And you go out into the woods and you see a bear and this is a threat. Well, the next time you go out into the woods, you're going to be hyper looking like, is the bear here? Is the bear going to come out? Where's the bear? And this is exactly how our core wounds show up in our relationships. It's like this perceived threat, right? And then when we go and we get into an attachment with somebody, the same way we had an attachment with our caregiver, we learned that we associate that attachment with this threat. So we get into another attachment, which could be in our romantic relationship, and we perceive this now as a threat. So it's like now we're in this relationship and we're looking for that bear, that betrayal, that inconsistency, that incongruency, or something bad is going to happen. And this is how it really shows up. And it can be very detrimental because when you have this type of core wound, you definitely are operating from a place of fear, and you can kind of scare people off and push them away if you're too overbearing with kind of being too suspicious or questioning things all the time, or just kind of being too much, right? And the reason why we tend to be too much or overbearing is because we don't have the proper tools yet, but we're going to change that today. So what can we actually do to heal? Well, number one is going to be belief reprogramming. We have to reprogram this wound at the level it exists, which is at the level of the subconscious mind. Now, how you're going to do this is by using a tool that I like to call autosuggestion. And what this is for 21 days, you're going to find 10 to 15 pieces of evidence of where you actually have the opposite in your life. So because you have this betrayal core wound, I want you to find 10 to 15 pieces of proof, very specific pieces of proof that shows you where you actually have loyalty. So this could be like, I have loyalty at work. My boss is really nice to me. You know, they let me get off work early the other day. My boss has been giving me time off when I ask for it. She's very loyal to me, right? I have loyalty in my relationship. You know, my partner is here every single night. They were here last night. Whatever that looks like, I want you to find 10 to 15 pieces of evidence of where you actually do have loyalty in your life. And what this does is it's bringing up memories, and memories have emotion attached to it. So the same way we get programmed through repetition plus emotion, we are utilizing these same principles to reprogram our subconscious mind. So after about 21 days, you will notice this wound very subsiding and kind of going away. Now let's jump into number 2. And this is going to be the relationship you have to yourself. Now I want you to make a list of places where you might be actually betraying yourself. Why is this important? Because we have something called our subconscious comfort zone. So when we have a betrayal core wound and it's showing up all the time, this is through repetition plus emotion, right? And when we are betraying ourselves all of the time, we are actually keeping this wound alive, and we want to not do that. So we have to interrupt this process by getting clear about where we might be betraying ourselves and keeping this wound alive, and keeping that as part of our subconscious comfort zone. So how maybe do you violate your own boundaries and maybe people please at the expense of yourself to really show up for other people? Where do you promise yourself that you are going to do something and then you don't show up, right? That lack of incongruency. Where are you self-silencing because you don't want to create conflict, but you actually have these deep needs that need to be expressed? I want you to make a list of where you might be betraying yourself and make a plan to kind of start upgrading these things and being conscious about really showing up for you moving forward. And let's talk about number 3. Number 3 is going to be being able to express your needs in real time. Now, a lot of the times we feel betrayed or we feel like we can't trust because we're not having very open and transparent communication. Being able to go to your partner vulnerably and ask kind of what's going on or what the plans are, that is okay. That's just getting a little context on what's happening, you know, being transparent and open with one another, being able to call each other and say, hey, this is going on. That is no big deal. A lot of the times fearful avoidants have all these fears, like they're going to think I'm bad. I don't want to be too much for them. They're going to leave if I start being too much of a burden, right? And that can't be further from the truth. You are allowed to ask for things. So I like to call building trust the 3 C's. Now, the 3 C's are 3 major needs that you have around being able to build trust and sustain it over time. This is going to be consistency, consideration, and congruency. So consistency is like, you know, maybe you have consistent communication on a regular basis. This helps you feel safe and grounded in your relationship. Consideration is that you are taking one another into consideration in your relationship dynamics so that you feel that you can trust that person to take you into consideration when making any choices that could potentially affect you. And then, of course, congruency, right? It's like what they say and what they do really needs to align. And it's not going to be like, oh, set in stone, you can never change anything. But it's like ultimately you want to be at a place where it's like, if you say something, you want to show up, and you want that same thing from your partner so that you can feel safe in that dynamic. And if things ever do have to change, you can always let them know, hey, it's no big deal. I completely understand. But if something changes, just please have a conversation with me about why this is changing, and then we can move forward. It's just being able to be transparent and open. And this is a game changer for the fearful avoidant. So make sure that you're able to actively and effectively communicate these things. And of course, try to remember just to be positive and uplifting and caring, and watch your tone, right? Have a neutral tone when you're communicating. Maybe look into positive communication. around expressing and communicating needs. And I promise you, by doing these 3 things, you will be able to start trusting more and feeling more grounded in your relationship and remove this core wound out of your life for good. So I hope that helps. I hope it makes sense. Hit that subscribe button for future Fearful Avoidant videos. Sending lots of love. God bless.